Ocean alkalinity enhancement is a novel technique to remove carbon with the ocean. But of course, with novel techniques that are inside this field, you have uncertainties. Uncertainties on how much carbon you are removing because you have an open system as the ocean, or how much is your impact on the marine biota. Because if you are putting the CO2 and the alkalinity inside the ocean, what's the impact on the marine biota?
Carbonsations, today's carbon industry leaders.
Welcome to the Carbonsations podcast, where we speak to some of the leading figures in the emerging carbon industry. Our guest today is Stefano Cappello, CEO and co-founder of Italian carbon removal startup Limenet. Limenet is a company focused on improving the ocean's alkalinity while also battling climate change. Stefano, it's a pleasure to meet you and have you join us on this podcast today. Now, what you guys do at Limenet sounds highly interesting, and I genuinely can't wait to hear more about it. But before we get into that, it would be wonderful if you could tell us a little bit more about your background personally and what led you into the carbon removal space.
Hi, Violet. It's really a pleasure to be here and to explain what we are doing in Limenet. So thanks very much for the question. And so let's try to speak about myself. Actually, I wanted to do something better for my, let's say, my life and the future that our generation and future generation will have. And so I decided to go inside the carbon removal industries because since I was a child, I was, I was seeing with my experience the damage of the climate change. In particular, in the region in which I live, so North Italy, we have a lot of glacier, or we were used to have a lot of glacier and a lot of snow during winter. So it seems really stupid, but not seeing the winter that is coming each year and it's delayed. So it's no more coming in October, but it's coming in November or December, and the snow is not yet present in the mountains. And the glaciers are melting each year really fast. So that makes me really have this spark in my mind to say, okay, this is really a huge, huge problem. It's not just a problem for our generation, but let's think how our child, our nephew, in the next few years. So if we don't do nothing now, what could happen? And so since I was a child, I was looking nature and how it was reacting with climate change. And let's say that I was expecting that adults, old people, were solving this problem. But when I went in the university, I did the mechanical engineering in Italy, and I was growing up and I was seeing that nobody was doing anything to solve climate change, or at least the majority of people were doing nothing. And I was doing nothing as well, but I was thinking, okay, adults should do it because they are more old, they have more expertise. So what could I do as a young teenager? But, things were evolving. I was growing, I was studying more, I was going inside the work in a corporate, a big Italian corporate. But still, I was not happy because my life was not something really good for the society and for climate change. And basically 3 years ago, I started this project that now it's Limenet, to try to, research a way how to remove carbon and to store it into the ocean as alkalinity. And eventually I decided to quit my job in the corporate that I was working and to focus 100% myself and my, soul to try to do this as a work, 100% work. And so this is my background, basically. So a young teenager that I was really suffering because looking, at climate change disasters, and I wanted to do anything that was possible to try to solve it. And so this is basically the driving passion I have behind me.
Okay, and what made you focus on ocean alkalinity specifically, as your carbon removal method of choice?
As you know, Italy is surrounded by the Mediterranean seawater. So I was used to go to the sea each year in summer, meanwhile living in a place in North Italy where I'm surrounded by mountains. But, looking the ocean and seawater every year and knowing that climate change is not just on the mountain, but it's also on the ocean. So Violet, and maybe also our audience, if it's inside the sea, maybe they know it. But one of the other problems we have with climate change is ocean acidification. Because naturally CO2 is captured by the ocean. So basically 30% of the CO2 we have emitted is already being captured by the ocean. But unfortunately, we have a drawback, and this is ocean acidification. Because CO2 is let's say, a weak acid that is dissolved into seawater, but unfortunately is getting that acid, and the acidity is damaging marine biota. So all the organisms that is living in the ocean are getting affected by ocean acidification. And since I didn't know that, basically 4 years ago, and when I discovered it, I was like, wow. So this is not just a problem on the mountain, but it's a huge, massive mess into the ocean. And I was looking into the solution, so that were removing CO2, and there are a lot of bench of solutions, so direct air capture and then geological storage or a biochar or whatever it's involved in biomass. And I was like, okay, but if I find anything that is able not just to remove CO2, but also to control ocean acidification, man, this is really what I want to do. And ocean alkalinity enhancement is, I think, one of the best way that the nature, it's already doing it, but it's possible to really do the removal, meanwhile contracting ocean acidification. That is basically also what enhanced weathering is doing it. And if we are able to leverage with engineering techniques, the speed, the natural speed, the speed that this chemistry and natural removal have, decreasing so the time that is needed to remove a carbon, I mean, this is something that we really can think to scale up. And basically, this is what our vision is to do it. So to try to scale up an ocean-based solution to try to store carbon and to couple it with, let's say, direct air capture techniques that is able to capture CO2 from the atmosphere. That could be also, let's say, an ocean-based solution, but can also be let's say, a field-based solution.
Okay, and Stefano, so for someone who's not very familiar with ocean alkalinity enhancement, and particularly the way you combine it with carbon removal, could you explain, to me and those listening, exactly how Limenet's technology works?
Yes, absolutely. So for those who doesn't know ocean alkalinity enhancement, basically it's a way how to remove carbon into the ocean. I just want to make an introduction of this method. So naturally, in the carbon cycle that we have in the Earth, CO2 is naturally captured by the raindrop when it's raining, because CO2 is in the atmosphere. The rain takes it in the drop, and when it goes in and it precipitates into the mountains, into our surface of our world, when it find a carbonatic rocks. So, for instance, calcium carbonate or magnesium carbonate, etc. They weather this rock during time into basically a calcium bicarbonate or magnesium bicarbonate, and this is the way how in nature it happened. And you can see it when you go into the caves when there are stalagmite or stalactite. Basically, those caves are done by the weathering of carbonatic rocks during the millennia of years in the past. And afterwards, when CO2 is, let's say, is dissolved with the carbonatic rocks into this calcium bicarbonate, then with rivers, they goes into the ocean. So naturally, the CO2 that was previously in the atmosphere is going back to the ocean as calcium bicarbonate. And this is a way how it's possible to, let's say, to remove carbon in nature. And ocean alkalinity enhancement is a way how, let's say, human try to leverage this natural chemistry that we find in nature, but with, let's say, engineering, mindset. So it's trying to spread an alkaline feedstock into the surface of the ocean and to try to make this feedstock capturing CO2 from the atmosphere. So basically, you are making the ocean a little bit, let's say, as a sponge, more, let's say, or sponge, and you are able to capture CO2 from the atmosphere. And the advantages is that the the art, basically 71% of the art is the ocean. So if you are able, and the feedstock, so alkaline feedstock as such as calcium carbonate, it's really present into our crust. So we have raw material, we have the ocean, we have this capability to potentially scale out this technology. And this is a way how it's possible to remove carbon as ocean alkalinity enhancement. I hope it was clear, Violet.
Yes, this definitely helps a lot. So how does your business model work in that case then?
The business model of the companies such as Limenet is try to remove carbon, first of all, and then to sell the removal of this carbon as a carbon credit to businesses that want to reach net zero by 2030, 35, 40, 50. So they are net zero target, and they want to compensate their unavoidable emissions with carbon credits. And those businesses, let's say, they are willing to pay advanced technology-based solution to remove carbon instead of just buying, trees in Guatemala or in Brazil. But they are, let's say, they have maybe some weaknesses about monitoring, reporting, and verification. So those are the targeted companies that right now are willing to pay as a service to remove the carbon because of their unavailable emissions.
Okay. And Stefano, another question I have for you, and you're probably more aware than this than anyone here or anyone listening, but there are plenty of concerns out there regarding the safety of ocean alkalinity enhancement. And perhaps some of it stems from a lack of understanding of the approaches used, but please do tell how you address these concerns.
Absolutely. Ocean alkalinity enhancement is a novel technique to remove carbon with the ocean. But of course, with the novel techniques that are inside this field, you have uncertainties. Uncertainties on how much carbon you are removing because you have an open system as the ocean, or how much is your impact on the marine biota. Because if you are putting the CO2 and the alkalinity inside the ocean, what's the impact on the marine biota? So those variables is something that you need to make a research, but based on the state of the art of the science right now, and based on the experiments that companies such as ours are doing, let's say outside, not in laboratories, the behavior of the alkalinity inside the environment is quite good and really good for the marine biota. So basically, those uncertainties is something that companies such as ours need to really take care. And we need to make research and invest a lot of money to try to decrease the risks, but it's something that is manageable. So those uncertainties that we have it regarding MRV or regarding our impact is something that we need to research, but based on the state of the art, that seems to be really, really good.
Excellent. Thank you for the detailed explanation. It's certainly very much appreciated. Moving on to matters that have more to do with the business side of things as well. I know that Limenet is part of Remove's latest cohort. To those of our listeners who don't know them, Remove is an accelerator for European carbon removal startups, and as of recently, they've also started working with India. But back to my question, as part of their latest cohort, what can you share of your impressions about it so far? What's the experience been like?
Yeah, so Remove it's a great accelerator for companies such as ours, so early stage company that want to enter a new market, so the carbon dioxide removal market. And the accelerator, it's really important to, first of all, to make your team on the same page. Because when you are an early stage startup, you need to hire new people that maybe are not in this market, new market, and following this course to, let's say, the team, basically it's so helpful to make everybody on the same page. And secondly, it's really important to have, let's say, a more experienced tutor that knows better than you the state of the art of the carbon dioxide removal market and the carbon dioxide removal ecosystem. So basically, this is really makes a lot of adding value in your strategy, in your decision-making system, and for not making mistakes. So this is something that I really suggest people that want to start a new business in this industry or that already have a startup to apply to the next quarter.
Okay, thank you. Stefano, you recently launched your very first industrial plant in Augusta, Italy, so huge congratulations on that milestone. What can you tell us about this project?
Thank you very much. Basically, this project is one of the first of a kind project of basically ocean alkalinity enhancement, or as we say ourselves, it's we call it pH equilibrated ocean alkalinity enhancement. Our technology basically is like ocean alkalinity enhancement version 2.0. For who is listening to us, what's the difference is? The difference is that usually ocean alkalinity enhancement is an open system in which you spread alkaline feedstock into the surface of the ocean. But what we are doing is try to avoid this spread of alkaline feedstock, but it's trying to do the alkalinity inside reactors and then to inject those alkalinity into the seawater. And in order to decrease, again, the uncertainties regarding the monitoring, reporting, and verification of how much carbon you remove it, basically, we do remove the carbon inside the reactors, creating an alkalinity that we say it's equilibrated with the atmosphere. And then we store that equilibrated alkalinity into the ocean. So basically, we are not making the ocean as a sponge, but we are making, let's say, inside reactors, the already stored CO2 inside alkalinity, and then we inject this into the ocean. And this pilot right now, it's one of the world's biggest pilot plants that's able to remove 800 tons per year of CO2 as alkalinity. And we are using in order to make tests, to make the first negative emission production and to deliver the first credits to the buyer that bought us, the first credits, and to make hours of work for improving the next plant we will build. And this is really useful also to study the marine impact on what we are doing inside the open system, and is used for Italian university to make research on it.
Okay, and can you disclose who the buyer is?
So the buyer is Climadown, and they bought 1,000 tons of removal by Limenet. And so we are really excited to deliver the first tons. Of course, it's a first of a kind for us. So we are also learning how to do everything with verification, verified bodies, with the methodology we developed. So it's a kind of first of a kind also for us and make everything working.
For sure. Does the plant operate at full capacity already, or are you kind of like developing that in stages?
So we are developing that in stages, as we are a startup, so we don't have the financial capability right now to build everything on the same day. So we are increasing the production capacity of this plant by mid of 2025 in order to be 24/7 operational in Sicily, in South Italy. And this is a first of a kind small plant. Then we are designing a plant that is 10 times bigger. We don't know yet where to build it, and hopefully we will be able to do by 2026. And this will be the real first of a kind industrial facility with already economy of scale. So we are really keen to smash this milestone by 2026.
That also brings me to my next question. What's the political landscape like for ocean alkalinity enhancement in Italy, like in particular, but also in the EU at large, perhaps?
Actually, there are some uncertainties how to categorize those kind of new technologies. In Italy, for instance, we are working with the Ministry of the Environment in Rome, so in the capital of Italy, in order to understand exactly how it's possible to categorize those kind of technologies inside the already present regulation. But since we are not spreading feedstock into the surface of the ocean, it's quite helpful because we are not inside the London Protocol, we are not inside MARPOL, but though it's still, of course, challenging because you are doing something that's not already been done by anybody else in Italy, but also in Europe. So you are the one that needs to speak with the regulators, needs to speak with all the stakeholders and to explain them, to try to see there are regulations, to try to see if you can put your own regulations. So in the already present, legislation. And I see that there is a lot of work to do, but it's possible and it would be feasible in the next few years to have, a regulatory framework, how to categorize ocean alkalinity enhancement and all technology in the carbon dioxide removal sectors.
But would that be would you be helping to make that framework, or are you prepared to offer your own, or how does this work exactly?
Actually, what we do is to work with four ends. So our our work as a company to provide data, to provide our methodology, protocols, scientific know-how. And then it's a work that regulators needs to do in order to understand exactly what are the law right now that we have in Italy, but we have in Europe, because basically the law are the same in European countries, and try to, make a framework of law that really fit what you are doing. So it's a work that needs to be done hand by hand with the regulator.
Understood. So perhaps in that line of thought, how do you see this space, like CDR at large, but also ocean carbon removal specifically, developing in the future?
I hope that will be an industry that will grow, not because, of course, I'm a startup inside this sector and I need to, make value of the company because I have investor on the company. But I really believe that if we want to reach net zero by 2050, we have 25 years. So we really need to hurry up and to build things, of course, with a brain and not in a random way. But we really need to try to work together with regulators or stakeholders, investors, banks, buyers, to really build as fast as possible this industry. Because, if not, we will reach more than 3 degrees by the end of the century. So it's really something that we need to do because of immorality we have for the future.
That's perhaps like the technology side that we're talking about. But as far as the CDR market, like selling carbon removal credits, buying carbon removal credits, how do you see the market right now as far as supply and demand goes? And what are perhaps the main challenges in the industry?
So the market, of course, it's in the early stage as well, even though right now it's really more developed than 3 years ago when I started. However, I hope that now with 6.4 article being approved, we will have, let's say, more saturated market in the next few years. That would be saturated. But I still think that, let's say, regulator should help us to structure this market, because as soon as this market will be more regulated, and companies need to comply with it, it will be really helpful for all the industry, because as soon as companies understand that they need to buy high quality carbon credits, not just, forestation credits or REDD+ credits. When you have demand, you have bankability of projects, you have more investors that will jump in and will be really a boomerang of everything. So I hope really in the next few years will be an exponential growth of it.
You probably heard about Article 6. Finally, there being agreement on it at COP29 last week. Do you think this is going to be a major boost for the market now?
Yeah, I was in COP. I just came yesterday from COP, and I was there when there was this decision. So I was in a plenary, and it was amazing. So I extremely believe that this Article 6.4 will boost this economy. I don't know when, and I don't know how practically we'll boost it, but surely it will boost it. Because when you see that this decision has been taken in reality, wow, man, this is incredible. So I really believe that in the next few years, there will be a boost of this market. I don't know exactly how it will be, but surely it will be.
Well, we're certainly all hopeful about it. Stefano, I have a final question for you before we wrap up this episode, and that is regarding Limenet's upcoming developments. What announcements or future plans should we stay on the lookout for?
Right now, as I was mentioning before, we are increasing our first-of-a-kind small factory in South Italy by 2025. And then we are making the fit study for our, let's say, first-of-a-kind medium-size factory. We don't know yet where to do it. And we hopefully begin to build it by 2026. This will be a modular plant of 10,000 tons of negative emission per year. And our goal is to make it running by early 2027, if everything goes smooth. And to prove the world that there is this new technology that is able to make the removal directly from the atmosphere using, lime and limestone as a raw material, and to store permanently the CO2 inside the ocean as calcium bicarbonate, meanwhile contracting ocean acidification. So this is basically our value proposition for investors, for buyers, and from the world. So to have an integrated solution that does carbon removal, so not just capturing, but also stores CO2. But meanwhile, that's so important to contract ocean acidification.
Brilliant. Stefano, thank you so much for your time and for the detailed explanations of how ocean alkalinity enhancement and how Limenet works and how you're using it for the better of the planet. It was a real pleasure to speak to you.
It's a pleasure also for me. Thank you, Violet.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Carbonsations podcast and would like to hear more conversations like this, please be sure to subscribe. We really appreciate the support.